class. So in today's class, we will be talking about the different types of second level of operating systems. So in our earlier revision part, we talked about a time sharing operating system. Then we talked about multi-programming operating system, etc. Now in the way we are now discussing about the advanced concepts, that is distributed operating systems, clustered operating systems, real-time operating systems, and handheld operating systems. So these are the four major second level type of operating systems which are available. So before we dig deep into these four concepts, the first we should have some glimpses on the parallel systems here. So when we are going to call it as a parallel system, then the first and foremost primitive what we should understand is that the parallel system, they are going to have more than one central processing unit. If I am going to call it as a CPU, then it is going to have one arithmetic logic unit and one control unit. So both of them, they are going to be part of the CPU. But if I am going to call it as a dual core, if I'm going to call it as a dual core, what will happens was that, so in the I will be having multiple core, that is CPU 1 and CPU 2. Similarly, see control unit 1 and control unit, this is arithmetic logic unit, and this is also arithmetic logic unit and control unit 2. So now we can assume this one as a CPU. So now you should understand the distinction between the CPU and the dual core CPU. So in a dual core CPU, we will be having two arithmetic logic units and two control units. So whereas a single core, we are going to have only a single ALU and control unit. So now coming to this parallel system, we are going to have a tightly coupled systems. So when we are going to say it is a tightly coupled system, so we can say that processors will share the same memory and they are going to work with a common memory here. So I am going to have a shared memory, and this shared memory is going to be divided among multiple CPUs. So the same memory will be divided and can be used by multiple CPUs. So in such a case, we are going to say it is a tightly coupled architecture. So this system, we are going to call it as tightly coupled system. So when we are going to say it is a tightly coupled system, now these they are going to work in parallel, nor they are going to work concurrent. So they are going to support the concurrent programming. So why or what are the advantages of this parallel system or a concurrent system? Why are the tightly coupled was? It is going to increase the throughput, and it is going to increase this economy factors, and finally it is going to increase the reliability of a system here. So the parallel system architectures, now they are going to be divided into two setups. One we are going to call it as symmetric multiprocessors, and second one we are going to call it as asymmetric multiprocessors. So now you can see this symmetric multiprocessor diagram here. So in symmetric multiprocessor diagram, we are going to assume each processor is going to run a same identical copy of the operating system. So that is what you have to take away here. So each process is going to run an identical copy of an operating system. So you can see this operating system is going to have in CPU 1, CPU 2, CPU 3 and CPU 4. So and they are going to can run at once without performance degradation. So that is second takeaway of a symmetric multiprocessing. So there won't be any loss of performance degradation in which is going to happen in this symmetric multiprocessing. So when we are going to call it as symmetric, it is more or less having it is going to happen only the one-to-one relationship. It is going to have a one-to-one relationship, and in this one-to-one relationship, it do has these users and CPUs, users and CPUs. So in this way, it is going to have multiple ways of information, which is with the symmetric multiprocessing. After symmetric multiprocessing, we have this second structure called as asymmetric multiprocessing. So in asymmetric multiprocessing, one of a system is going to be assumed as a master node. One of a system is going to be assumed as a master node, and the remaining processes, they are going to be assumed as save processes, and the remaining processors, they are going to be assumed as slave processes. So we do have n number of users, and these n number of users, they are going to work with a single point of contact, and that is what we are going to call here as a master node. And from this master node, the data, it is going to be procurated to the remaining server nodes. So that is where the parallel system is supports. It supports both the symmetric multiprocessing architecture, and both it supports the asymmetric multiprocessor architecture. So with the background of symmetricity, with the background of asymmetricity, now this distributed system has been came into existence. So first of all, to have a nurturing towards the distributed system, first we should need to have know the glimpses of what is parallel system, and after the parallel system, what type of architectures these parallel systems are going to take up. So that is what we have seen. So parallel systems, yeah, they are going to support concurrent programming, and this parallel system, they are going to support two types of architectures. One, we mentioned it as symmetric processing, another we mentioned it as asymmetric processing, and after that we have taken this topic called as distributed system. So in distributed system, so you can see the functionalities, they are going to be distributed among the physical resources. So that is what a key takeaway regarding this distributed system. So distributed system, it is going to support a loosely coupled system. So that is one of an important thing what we should look into this distributed system. So when we are going to say it is a loosely coupled systems, what we are going to assume was we will be having a shared memory, we will be having shared memory, then we will be having local memory 1, local memory 2, and local memory 3. This one we are going to call it as local memory 1. Second thing we are going to call it as local memory 2, and third thing we are going to call it as local memory 3. So then the next level, we are going to have the central processing units here. Then the next level only, we are going to have the central processing units here. So that means CPU, it can communicate with the local memory, nor it can communicate with the shared memory. So CPU, it can communicate with the local copy, nor it is going to communicate with the shared memory. So this type of architectures, we are going to call here as a loosely coupled architectures. So each processor, that is CPU, as C drive, D drive, E drive. That is what you are going to call it as a local memory. Then you can connect to the server, nor you can connect to the cloud. And that cloud is not meant for you. It is going to be a common for all of you. So if such is the case, then the shared memory is going to have its existence, and that architecture is preferably taken up with this distributed system. So when we are going to take it as a cloud, we say it is a software as a service, or infrastructure as a service. When all those definitions are occurring, the basic primitive inside the cloud, it is going to be a distributed network. So cloud is nothing but it is one of a form of a distributed network, because the functionalities of operating system, they are going to be spread through multiple systems. So such is where this distributed system is going to come into existence. So we can have these advantages of distributed system. The first one we can see resources are going to be shared among the network. So when we are going to say a distributed system, so we can say n number of systems are going to be connected via a network. So this we are going to call it as a network here, and CPU 1, CPU 2, CPU 3, and CPU 4. Now these they are going to be connected via a local area network or a wide area network. So n number of autonomous computers, they are going to be connected through a local area network, nor they are going to be connected via this wide area network. Got it? So if it is within an organization, yes, people will go for local area network. If it is between organizations and they are geographically spread across the globe, that means one office is in Bhimavaram, another office is in Hyderabad, another office is in some US, another in UK. If such is a case, then we can't establish a wide network within organizations which is spread to multiple cities. So at that case, people will take the support rather than the local area network. They will go with a global structure. That is where this wide area network is going to be preferred. And second thing, the way how a distributed operating system can communicate with its peers, a way a distributed operating system can communicate with its peers, that is, it can be with one-to-one. One-to-one, we are going to call it as peer-to-peer systems, and we can say it is going to be a many-to-one. So if I am going to have a client server architecture, there will be many clients and there is a single server. So you are working on Gmail. So Gmail, it is a server. So crores of people, the trillions of people are going to have a Gmail account, right? So, but for all the Gmail, the server is going to be the same at that case. So a distributed system, it is going to support a many-to-one architecture. So many clients are there, but still server is going to be only one. And if it is one-to-one relationship, if it is going to be one system to another system, in such a case, this peer-to-peer communication is going to take up. Okay. So now we talked about a loosely coupled structure. Then we talked about how a distributed system is going to make a correspondence, that it can be a client server architecture, nor it can be a peer-to-peer architecture. That is what we talked about. Now we are going to say within this network, we are able to exchange our files. We are able to exchange our resources. So if I'm going to say it is resources, yeah, it can be CPU cycles, nor it can be some memory, nor it can be some IO. So all are going to be exchanged within the network. Then we are going to call that concept as a resource sharing. Later on, the second aspect, what this distributed system is going to bring up is, it is going to have high, if it is going to have high computational speed, that is load sharing is going to be taken place. That means if a CPU is going to be idle and if it is noticed by the operating system, another CPU load is going to be balanced. Work is going to be migrated from CPU to CPU based upon the scheduling, based upon the processing of a CPU. If a CPU time is idle, to overcome that idle time, if there is another CPU working on huge task, that task is going to be distributed to another content. So that is what we are going to call here as computational speed, and followed by load sharing. Yeah. Third one is going to be reliable. Third thing is going to be say that at any moment of time, the network won't be down. At any moment of time, the network will not be down. If it is down, there is no other thing that my job is lost, my content is lost. No, it is not going to be in a such scenario. The data is going to be stored in a cloud, and data can be extracted at any moment of time, and the user will not feel that at what system has been down. So he doesn't know, but still his work is going to be in progress. So such is where this reliability is going to happen. So when we are going to call it as a reliability concept, the CPU will see that if anything goes wrong, automatically another CPU is going to be assigned the job, and it sees that no user knows that whether which central processing unit is executing his task, whether he is able to, whether he is unable to execute his jobs. No, that such type of condition is not going to be pretended towards the user, where this reliability is going to take place. Yes, the fourth word we are going to call it as communication. So communication will be within the network. We are going to call it as intra, and it can be between network. So both the ways, whether it is an intra network or whether it is an inter network, so both the systems, this communication is going to take place. So we have talked about all the aspects of distributed system here. So failure will not affect the entire network system. Then we talked about the email exchange. So and then we have also talked about the how sharing is going to happen with the different resources in the network. Then we talked about how the load balancing is taken up. Then how the scaling is going to take place, whether it is an internet nor it is going to be intranet. So that is also taken up. So these are some of the advantages regarding the distributed system. So after distributed system, we do have one more architecture called as a symmetric architecture. We do have one more architecture called as symmetric architecture. So just now we talked that there are two types of architectures. One we are going to call it as symmetric, another we are going to call it as an asymmetric architecture. So in asymmetric architecture, we can say this as a shared memory. So we are going to call the memory here, what we are going to write is going to be called as shared memory, and this shared memory, it is going to be transmitted towards the central processing unit, and central processing unit is going to have its own cache memory. So cache memory, we can say it is some high speed and intermediate memory. So intermediate memory, and we can say there is no set of we can say that there is registers. So they are going to be having some temporary storage is going to be provided via this registers. Temporary storage is going to be provided via these registers. So that is where this symmetric multiprocessing is taken up. I have already explained this symmetric multiprocessing in my previous slide. Okay, now I am now again discussing more. So followed by a dual core system. Yes, we have already talked about this dual core system. So when we are going to say a dual core, so the processor, the chip, whatever we can say it is, we can say quad core, odd core chip. So if I'm going to say quad core, so we will be having 4 CPUs. If we are going to say octa core, so 8 CPUs. So now now in the websites when purchasing a mobile phone, so people will be looking at how many number of cores are there to my mobile processor, whether it is a quad core processor, octal core processor, dual core processor. So you are going to check. Similarly, how much RAM speed is there and how much ROM speed is there. So how much is the battery? So you are looking into the 4 basic constraints when purchasing a mobile phone. Similarly, the same setup which was established a long back in the fourth decade, that is in 1990s to 2000, the dual core system, they have already turned up, and they are going to support more than executing one process, that is called as multitasking and multiprocessing. For that, they have encouraged this multi-core chips, or they have encouraged this multi-core processors. So you can see here one core, the entire central processing unit is going to have its own set of registers, own set of cache memory. Similarly, it is going to have another core which is having this own set of registers and own set of cache memory. So a dual core system is a system, a chip is fabricated with more than one central processing unit. Then we are going to call that as a dual core system. If the same thing it is 4, we call it as octa core. If the same thing it is 8 CPUs, then if it is 4, we are going to call it as quad core, and if it is 8, we are going to call it as an octa core processors. Okay, after this, after the clustering systems is taken up, after the distributed system is going to taken up, the next word of an advanced operating systems will be the clustered systems. the next primitives which are going to be part of an operating system is going to be after the distributed system. We call it as clustering. So clustering is nothing but here we are going to call as grouping. So a cluster, we say some same set of elements, they are going to be available at based upon their uniqueness, based upon their features, same set of clustering elements, they are going to be pulled up. So that is where this clustering systems is going to be designed. So how a system to be clustered and how a system needs to see that all set of process has to be taken up at one area, another set of jobs has to be taken up at another area. So that is a major challenge towards the operating system. So in such a case, the process has been simplified with a concept called as SAN, that is storage area network. So I will write the hierarchy here. The first one was distributed system. The second one was storage area networks, and third thing was cloud computing, and the fourth one was the fog, which is not at all now released, but it is under construction. So the distributed system has its origins, and distributed systems has been updated to storage area network. Storage area network has been upgraded to the cloud, and cloud now they are going to upgrade it to the fog. So a storage area network is a network where it is going to support the interoperability. So we are going to call it as interoperability. When we take up a word called as interoperability, one, it is going to have similarity. One, it is going to look on the emphasizes part of similarity. What is similarity here? I can say there is inter-segment similarity, and there is another word called as intra-segment similarity. So within the same set of jobs, if they are similar, then they are going to be pooled. And similarly, the same rule applies to other, and they are going to be distinguished with one another. Okay, now which architectures are going to be taken up so that the clustering systems could efficiently work? Yes, for that they have chosen the first one as asymmetric clustering, and it is going to be followed by symmetric clustering. So we can see here in asymmetric clustering, only one server is going to be run and others are going to be standbys. So only one system, only one server is going to take up an asymmetricity, and but when we are going to call it as a symmetric clustering, all n are running their applications. So I can show you the diagram what we discussed today morning itself regarding the symmetricity and asymmetricity. So here is a diagram which it is going to support a symmetricity diagram. So here in symmetricity diagram, we are going to have a one-to-one relationship. So we are going to have a one-to-one relationship, and we can see that everything is going to be independent with one another. But as far as asymmetricity is going to be concerned, as far as asymmetricity is going to be concerned, and this one it is going to as a root node or a master node, and remaining things they are going to be in form of a client. So this I am going to call it as client, and this one, the first one what we are going to pull up, where all the node contents are pulled up at a single position. So that one we are going to assume as a server. That means one system is going to be taken at as a server side, and remaining they are going to be assumed as a clients, and they are going to report to it. Similarly, we are going to have this symmetricity multiprocessing. In symmetricity multiprocessing, every process is going to be independent. So every CPU is going to be assigned with only one set of jobs. If there are n CPUs, yes, there are n number of users which are going to be allocated. So that is where we have taken up this the clustered systems. So in clustered systems, it is going to support either an asymmetricity clustering architecture, nor it is going to support this symmetricity architecture. Okay, so in today's class, we talked about the glimpses of two architectures, one symmetric and asymmetric. After symmetric and asymmetric, we then take up this distributed system. Then we have a discussion on clustered system. And after the clustered system, the third type of advanced operating systems is going to be this called as real-time systems. So these are going to be called as real-time systems. Yeah. So real-time systems, they are purely outcome-based things, and especially they are going to work for small-scale applications. Nor they are going to be worked for some medical image, and they are going to industrial applications, etc. So for all these, the clustering is going to the real-time systems, it is going to have some scientific applications, it is going to have some medical image segmentation, some industry control domain applications, etc. Got it? So real-time systems are systems. Now they are going to handle a situation, and it is going to be target based. I can say it is going to be target based, and it is to meet fixed deadlines. It is going to meet fixed deadlines. So for that, the real-time operating system is going to come into scenario. So and when it is going to deal with hardware, then it is going to deal with some hardware components such as microcontrollers, some microcontrollers, etc. Similarly, when it is going to work with software, then it is going to be totally programmed. So program need to be fixed, constraints to be verified, etc. So there we need a software program. So it can be microcontrollers, nor it can be some kernel architecture. It is going to be some kernel architecture, etc. So here you can see the diagram of, hope you are able to see the diagram of a real-time system. So this is layer 1. In layer 1, we have the task 1, task 2, and task 2, which is going to be taken up by the user. In layer 2, we are going to have the operating systems. So this is 2A, I can say, and this is some 2B, I can say. So this is the third. We are going to have the original hardware, that it can be CPU, memory, IO, what we have discussed. So I need some devices to be to be linked to the central processing unit. So there need some device drivers. So device drivers are nothing but some softwares. So if the devices, they have to be compatible with the CPU, thereby they have to be linked. For that, we are going to need these device drivers. So now, how this real-time microcontroller or an operating system is going to have its kernel. So when if it is such a case, I can say the first word was shell, second one will be the kernel, and then it is going to be with the hardware devices. So here at this juncture, we will be having the system calls, and at this juncture, we are going to have the operating system. So this is a actual scenario what we are going to mention. So above the shell, we are going to have the user interface here. So via the user interface, people are talking with the kernel. Calls are going to be generated with the system calls. System calls, it is going to migrate it to the kernel, and from kernel, the data is going to be hosted towards the hardware devices. So this chain is going to be there. So now we are going to talk about a microcontroller, which it is going to set up a real-time system. So a microcontroller, you can assume the components here. The first component was a scheduler, which it is going to schedule the process events using FCFS, SJF, round robin, priority scheduling. So all those, the scheduling is going to taken up. Later on, we are going to have a memory manager. Yeah, memory manager, it is going to manage with a virtual memory, a physical memory, etc. So the third thing, we are going to have a synchronization timers. So that is both timers, it is going to generate some series of clock pulses, and synchronization, yeah, it is going to see that two or more events to happen simultaneously, concurrently, but there is no clash between the first event and second event. So first event need not be having an effect of the second event. So if there is an interlatchability, now there are some solutions which are proposed by the operating system to see that the synchronization will not lead to the deadlock, etc. So for that, the microkernel is having the OS atmosphere where it is totally controlling the devices. So these are some of the set of contents which are going to be part of this real time. So these are, so I just repeat, we are going to have a process scheduling. So in this process scheduling, we are going to have FCFS, SJF, round robin, etc. Those we are going to be call it as scheduling algorithms. Thereby, we do have some memory management. So in this memory management, we are going to have the conversion between a physical address to the virtual address, as we have talked earlier in our previous classes. So virtual addresses, we do have some pages, and physical addresses, we do have page frames. Now it is up to the memory manager, or it is up to the operating system to map the pages with the page frames, so that it is going to be maintaining a page map table, and via the page map table, the data is going to be exchanged right from one content to the another content. So that is what we talked about this microkernel. Later on, we are going to have some BIOS, basic input output systems, basic input output systems. So this BIOS is nothing but the read-only memory. So read-only memory, it is going to have some crystal oscillator. It is going to have some, so I'm going to call it as read-only memory. It is going to have some BIOS. So it is going to generate some crystal operator. So it is going to have some clock pulses. So these clock pulses are going to be generated, and synchronization mechanism is going to be raised. What is synchronization? I can say that two or more events to be handled simultaneously and parallelly. In core 1, one job should execute. In core 2, another job should execute. So two or more jobs need to be happened concurrently, but there should not be any deadlock between the first process and the second process. So if such is a case, then we say that synchronization is going to happen. So synchronization, it is going to be done with mutual exclusion, semaphores, critical region, critical section, monitors, dining philosophers problem, bounded buffer problem, producer consumer problem. So these are all we have discussed earlier. So these are the primitives of an operating system, which sees that synchronization inside an operating system will happen. So that is where this synchronization is taking up. So as mentioned, real-time operating system, it is going to have turning with hardware content, and similarly it is going to meet with a software, which it is going to meet software deadlines. After the real-time operating system, we do have one more aspect that we are going to call it as handheld systems. Yeah, so handheld systems, live example you can see in the bus. Okay, so in the bus, we have ticket, the ticket conductors are there. They are holding their handheld devices, and they are punching the ticket for you. So that is one of an example you can see as a handheld device. And second example, the current bill reading. So they will come to your home, and they will go to the meter, and then they will take up the reading. So there they are having some sensors. So they are just putting the sensor over the meter, and that sensor, it is going to give the present reading, and that reading they are going to give it to the CPU, and then CPU is going to generate the bill. It is handed in less than 10 minutes, 10 seconds, etc. So that is one of the best example for this handheld system. So handheld system, people, they are going to call it as PDS. And some of the issues in handheld system, yeah, it is of limited memory, it is a little bit slow process, and the display screen is not as big as the mobile phone screen in your hands. So this the handheld systems you can see here. So this is the mobile user, and mobile user, he is going to have a keyboard. So with that keyboard only, he is going to work on data with the data, and he is going to give some instructions. So print, enter, display, something the commands over the number set. He is going to type that commands. And how is that system work? It is connected to an internet, and so for to use that internet, it is going to use some wireless adapters. So we use this Wi-Fi here. So the wireless adapters, they are going to do the routing towards the network layer here, and there is a synchronous bus. So we have address bus, control bus, and data bus. So that the data bus or address bus and control bus taking up these IO devices instructions, and you can see this mobile central processing unit. So as a laptop or a desktop, it is going to be fixed, but it is going to be a handheld system. The person can move from one position to another as you do with your cell phone. So you say it is a mobile CPU, and it is going to have some bridges, and the memory is going to be there, but memory is going to be having a low capacity. So it is going to have some mobile Android operating systems like Android OS, uh, the Nokia OS or Serbin. So these Serbium OS, which are totally towards the mobile operating system atmosphere, and they do work on a mobile browser. So we have Google Chrome or Firefox even on laptop, desktop, tab, or mobile. So in the same way, the PDI is going to have its own set of browser, and that browser they are going to have this micro browser, and it is going to be fabricated with a battery backup to recharge. So using this, people are going to work on this handheld devices. So there is a lot of migration of operating system advancements right from 1950 to 2000. So this is just a snapshot where in 1950 mainframes are occurred, in 1960 mini computers occurred, in 1970 some time sharing operating system, in 1990 some fault tolerance multiprocessing operating system, and you can see the advancements. So it is from multi-user to network to cluster based, and cluster based to multiprocessor with cloud, etc., and followed by the cloud. So in this way, the migration has been changed right from topic to from era to era, right from first generation computers to second generation computers. So this is all for today. So the key takeaways of today's class, we talked about advanced operating systems such as clustered operating system. Second one, we talked about the distributed operating system. Third, we talked about this handheld operating system. And these we had a backdrop how these architectures are going to take up. These architectures are going to work on symmetric and asymmetric way of things, and altogether the four types of operating systems what we discussed, they are going to support concurrent execution, parallel execution. So so multi-programming is going to be implemented. So that is all for the key takeaway from today's class. Yeah, thank you.